Equations are awesome, and in SOLIDWORKS 2012, they got even better. Equations allow you to drive an unlimited number of sketch values from one variable. If we later want to change the size, all we need to do is to update that one value, and all the linked values change. Think about a 1/4-inch hole that was used across multiple features and sketches. If we wanted to change that hole to a 3/8 of an inch hole, all we need to do is to edit the equation and all of the holes update. Otherwise, we would need to open each individual sketch and modify those values independently. In the graphics view here, we have 1/4 of a part that looks very similar to some things we've done in the past. And I'm going to drive this using equations. So I'm going to go up here to Smart Dimension, and I typically would have just clicked over here and clicked on maybe the centerline dimension and input a double dimension here. And if I do input this, notice I just type in the number and that's the value I get. It's a little pop-up that says start with an equal sign to create an equation. So if I do that, let's try it out. Equal. Now I can link to various different equations like sine or cosine or tangent, or I can even link to file properties like the mass, the density, the volume, the surface area. I mean, all kinds of things you can do here. Or we can just start typing a variable name out here. So as soon as I start typing something like length, L-E-N-G-T-H, then I get this little pop-up saying it's going to create a global variable. As soon as I click on OK, right, it says create a new variable called this. And I say yes. And now it gives me a chance to input what that value is supposed to be. So I'm going to type in 12 and then click OK. So now, not only have I created a variable called length, I've also assigned a value of 12 to it. And you can tell I have this little sigma in front of here. It looks like kind of like an E. That means that it's linked to an equation. And the equation editor is in the toolbars palette. So if I don't have this toolbar open right here, which is the tools palette, I can right click here and make sure that I go down and grab the tools palette, which is right here. I happen to have it already on, so I'm not going to turn it on, but that's where you get the equation editor. They also show up over here under equations, and then you got values that are linked to. Okay, so let's go on and add some more. Now we can continue to add things in the input bar, or we can go back to the equation editor itself and open these values up. Now I've got a bunch of values I can put in here. So I can say something like width, and then give it a value, and type in 8, and that equates out to something. You can even give it some notes. Type it over here, and we can just continue on this way. And we'll try height, and let's give it 2. So we can start inputting values like this that we can use in our design. And we can use things like whole. And you can write anything you want here. You can fill this whole space with a paragraph if you wanted to describe your variable, but you probably want to use something that's short and sweet, that's easy to remember and just to type in. And let's go give it like a 0.75. Okay, and we can continue here doing as many values as we want. And then notice down here also we have these equations that are set up. So we're saying D1 at sketch 1 is equal to that length value, right? So we can add more like that as well. So click on OK. Now we got a bunch of values that are in there. So now we just got to go link them to it. So click on the sketch dimension. I'm going to click here across that center line value. And this time, if I want to link that to something, hit the equals again. And then now I've got these global variables. They're already assigned. I can just go grab one of those, right? So I want the width this time. I say width and click OK and just inputs that value. Okay, I've got a few more that I can input here. I can say this value here, we want a dimension on that. And I can say equals again and just go grab that whole size. Click on OK. There's that hole. We don't have a value for these lines here quite yet. So I can just input it on the bar. So I can say this is going to be equal to space maybe. Okay, and click OK. It's going to create a new global variable. And then we're going to change the value here to 1. Click OK. And now that links those values and adds that global variable. Now once we've got all these values here, everything is equation driven. I don't actually need to ever come back to this sketch. Right? Everything here is all linked value. So I'm going to go and now create this feature and extrude it. And I'm going to type in like 1 inch. Okay, there's my extruded base boss, and there's my part. Now, notice I put in a value there. If I want to, I can also double click on this, and you can see all these values that are input that are there. And even that 1 inch value here, if I want to double click on that, I can link that as well. I can say equal global variables, and this time I can change it to height. So I can link all those. Okay, click on OK. And hit a rebuild. There it is. Now, if I want to change this part around, I can go right here to the equation editor. Here's all the values, and I can just go ahead and change any of these that I want to. I'm going to change this one to 8 inches. I'm going to change this one to 4 inches. I'm going to change this one to 1 inch, And let's change those holes to 0.5 inches. And the spacing will leave the same. I click on OK, and you can see that the part changes automatically. Everything just updates, and if it didn't update, you can always just hit rebuild to refresh that part. But everything automatically changes quickly. If I go back to that sketch, you can see those values are now input from those equations. It's a really easy way to go and leverage those values. Now, this is just one sketch, but I could be creating sketches on all types of different faces and creating a very complex part. If I was using a 1/2-inch hole, for instance, I could link to that 1/2-inch variable over and over and over again through multiple sketches, through multiple features. And if I changed one thing, they would all update. So it's a very, very powerful way to go about that. When I go back to the equation editor here, I have a few other things I can do. Notice I've got some values that are kind of linked here. I can display where they are. And I can also import and export these values. So if I'm using these type of things over and over again, I can export all these values to an equation. It's just a text file. So equation.txt. I have a chapter 16. I'm just going to drop it in there. And then these are all the values that I'm exporting out of there. And I can hit export, and there they go. And then notice down here, I've got a file that it's linking to this external file that's deriving these equations. So if I go back into the file system, inside of that folder, notice I've got this equation.txt file. If I click on it, I can see a preview of it, and I can actually right-click on it, and I can say open with, and something like a notepad would be good. And you can see it's just a simple text file that says, length is equal to 8, and then all these other values that are linking to what they are. So I can continue, as long as I keep that same format, I can start adding values here, or I can take this and import it to another file that I might be using length and width and height and hole diameters already, and then I just can update those values to what they need to be. So that links those values out to the system and makes it really handy, and you can see that value there. I could import that same file or a different file if I wanted to use different equations in my design. Design reusability is a great time saver, and using equations in your designs makes it easier to make changes and allows others to easily understand your input values. In SOLIDWORKS 2012, they made it very easy to create equation values in the input bar, so integrating them into your design is easy and efficient.